Some houses don't echo with memories. They echo with sounds that should have died long ago. Every night, from a hill no one dared to climb, music drifted into the town below. Slow, broken, and wrong. No one ever saw who was playing, but every morning, someone woke up changed, and someone else never woke up at all. This is not a legend. This is what happens when a house refuses to forget.
The house stood alone on a hill overlooking the town, old enough that even the oldest residents could not remember when it had first been built. Ivy strangled its stone walls, and its windows were always dark, as if light itself refused to stay inside. During the day, it looked abandoned. At night, it felt awake. Inside the house sat a grand piano, blackened with age and coated in a soft layer of dust that never seemed to fully settle. The keys were yellowed and uneven, some chipped, some cracked. No one had touched it in years, and yet, every night, it played. The music always began after midnight. It was slow at first, uncertain, like fingers searching for familiar notes. Then it grew stronger, faster, more desperate. The sound rolled down the hill and spilled into the town, slipping through windows, crawling under doors, settling into the minds of those trying to sleep. By the time the final note faded, the air felt empty, like something vital had been drained away. The woman who once lived in the house had been obsessed with the piano. She rarely left the building, avoided daylight, and filled every room with dark fabrics and heavy curtains. Neighbors who glimpsed her from a distance described her as pale, hollow-eyed, and unnaturally thin. At night, her silhouette could sometimes be seen moving across the windows, swaying in time with the music. When she died, no one noticed at first. The piano continued to play for several nights, just as it always had. Then, suddenly, the music stopped. Days passed, then weeks. A foul smell began drifting down from the hill, thick and unmistakable. Eventually, a small group of townspeople forced themselves to climb the path and enter the house. They found her body in the bedroom, stiff and decayed, her fingers curled as if frozen mid-performance. A single ring remained on one hand, its deep red stone catching the light like fresh blood. They buried her behind the house without ceremony, no prayers, no flowers. They wanted it over as quickly as possible. That night, the piano played again. The sound was different now, lower, heavier, filled with something that felt like hunger. Lights flickered in the empty house, shadows moved behind the windows. The town did not sleep. Weeks later, the property was sold. The new owners were young, optimistic, and unaware of the house's history. The town said nothing. They watched silently as the couple moved in, cleaned the rooms, and opened the curtains for the first time in decades. The first night passed quietly. The second night, a door creaked somewhere in the house. The third night, the piano lid was found open, though no one remembered touching it. The dust on the keys was gone. At night, one of them began hearing a clock ticking, slow, steady, and impossibly loud. During the day, the clock could never be found. The sound always stopped by morning. Sleep became difficult. Dreams grew vivid and disturbing. Music followed them into their waking hours, and every time the piano played, it felt closer, more personal. One evening, after another argument about the noise, the decision was made to destroy the piano. They dragged it outside, its legs sinking into the soft earth behind the house. As fuel soaked into the wood, a strange wind rose, cold and sharp. When the match was lit, the flames hesitated, then roared to life. As the piano burned, the music stopped. Inside the house, a door clicked shut. The next morning, the town woke to silence. No music, no movement. But soon, the smell returned. When the door was finally forced open, the house was empty of sound and full of death. 2 bodies lay in an upstairs room, hands mangled, fingers missing. On the floor beside them rested a familiar ring, its deep red stone darkened and dull. Behind the house, the grave remained untouched, and deep beneath the ashes, something still remembered how to play.
I came to that house because I needed silence. The city had exhausted me. The noise, the people, the constant presence of others. This house stood far from everything, at the end of a dirt road surrounded by empty fields. Its walls were peeling, and the darkness beneath the roof felt heavier than it should have. The owner asked very few questions and charged very little rent. That should have worried me, but at the time I didn't have the strength to care. On the first day, I walked through the entire house. The furniture was old but neatly arranged, as if someone had left in a hurry but still cared enough to keep things in order. Picture frames hung on the walls, but the photographs had been removed. Every room felt hollow, like the house was aware it had been abandoned. One door, however, remained closed. When I touched the handle, a strange cold crept into my fingers, and I stepped back without opening it. The first night was unnaturally quiet. Even villages have sounds at night, but here there was nothing. No insects, no wind, no distant animals. After a while, even the ticking of my watch felt wrong, as if time itself was slowing down. I had the constant feeling of being watched. I slept with the light on, but my rest was shallow and broken. On the second night, the silence broke. Around midnight, I felt movement inside the house. Not footsteps, something subtler, the faint pressure of weight shifting across wooden floors. I stayed still in bed, eyes wide open, barely breathing. My heart pounded louder with every second, and a single thought repeated in my mind: if I move, I won't be alone. By the third night, doubt was gone. I was half asleep when someone whispered my name. The voice was female, weak and unfinished, as if it had been worn down by crying. I sat up immediately. The room was empty, but the air had turned cold and damp. The window was closed, yet the curtain moved as though something had passed by it. That night, I finally opened the door I had avoided since the beginning. Inside was a small, nearly empty room. Against the wall stood an old mirror. The glass was stained and cloudy, covered with visible fingerprints. It looked as though someone touched it every day, someone who needed proof they were still there. After that, my dreams changed. Every night, I stood in front of that mirror. I could feel someone behind me, but whenever I turned around, there was nothing. Then, slowly, a woman's reflection would appear in the glass. Her face was incomplete, her eyes hollow, dark marks circling her neck. Her lips moved as if she were trying to speak, but no sound ever came out. On the 5th night, the dream followed me into reality. I was awake when I felt a presence beside my bed. I opened my eyes slowly. The woman stood there, hovering slightly above the floor. Her clothes belonged to another time, worn and lifeless. There was no anger in her eyes, only deep exhaustion, as if she had been waiting for something for far too long. The next morning, I went to the nearby village. An old man listened silently as I described the house. Then he sighed and told me the truth. Many years ago, a woman had lived there. Her husband killed her in that locked room. Before she died, she would stand in front of the mirror every day,
trying to understand whether she was still alive or already fading away. That night, I decided to leave. I packed my bag and opened the front door. The darkness outside was not normal. It felt heavy, thick, alive. As I stepped forward, I heard that familiar whisper behind me, telling me it was already too late. I turned around. The woman stood in the doorway, this time smiling faintly. I looked down and realized my feet were no longer touching the ground. In that moment, I understood the truth. That house was never meant to be lived in. It was a waiting room. And even now, when the night grows deep, that room still breathes. I still hesitate before telling this story to anyone, not because it sounds unbelievable, but because the fear in it is quiet. It doesn't scream. It settles in slowly, and once it does, it never really leaves. At the time, my job required frequent late-night travel between cities. I had grown used to empty roads, tired faces, and long, silent journeys. Traveling alone never bothered me. In fact, I preferred it. Silence felt safer than conversation. That night, the bus was nearly empty. A few passengers sat near the front, scattered and half asleep. I chose a seat toward the back, by the window. The engine hummed steadily as the city lights faded behind us. Soon there was nothing outside but darkness and the occasional outline of trees flashing past the headlights. About an hour into the journey, the bus slowed down and stopped at a small roadside point. It barely deserved to be called a stop. There were no shops, no buildings, just a single dim yellow bulb hanging from a crooked pole. A man boarded the bus. He looked ordinary at first glance, middle-aged, simple clothes, no luggage. His face carried a deep tiredness, the kind you don't get from a long day, but from something much heavier. He walked down the aisle and sat directly beside me, even though dozens of empty seats surrounded us. That was the first thing that felt wrong. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he spoke softly. "Traveling alone?" I nodded. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it felt rehearsed, like a line he had spoken many times before. He said he was going to the next city for work. Nothing unusual. His words were normal. Too normal. But as time passed, I noticed something strange. He never looked out the window, not once. No phone, no watch, just his eyes fixed straight ahead, as if he already knew what waited outside. The bus hit a rough patch of road and shook violently. I lurched forward slightly. He didn't move at all. It was as if the motion hadn't reached him. I told myself he must be used to traveling, or maybe asleep with his eyes open. Then, without turning his head, he asked, "Do you ever feel like roads remember things?" I glanced at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He lifted his hand slightly and gestured toward the darkness outside the window. "These roads," he said, "everything that happens on them, they don't forget." I forced a small laugh, hoping to break the tension. He didn't react. His face remained completely still, empty of emotion. A while later, the driver announced that the road ahead was damaged and that we would be slowing down. Almost immediately, I felt the temperature drop. The air grew unnaturally cold. There was no air conditioning, yet my skin prickled. I turned toward him. He was looking at me now, not at my face, but through it. His eyes seemed hollow, unfocused, like they were searching for something behind me. Quietly, he said, "I couldn't go any further." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. After a pause, he whispered, "Just here." Suddenly, the bus screeched to a halt. The brakes screamed. I was thrown forward, barely catching myself on the seat ahead. Passengers shouted in confusion. Someone cursed loudly. When I looked back at the seat beside me, it was empty. I stood up immediately, my heart racing. I scanned the aisle, the front seats, the door. He was nowhere inside the bus. I called out to the conductor and asked where the man who had been sitting next to me went. He stared at me, puzzled. What man? No one was sitting there. I insisted. Other passengers looked at me like I was confused, or worse. The driver stopped the bus completely, and we all stepped outside. We were standing on a sharp curve on the road. The headlights illuminated a rusted metal sign, half buried in dirt and weeds. The letters were faded, but still readable. Fatal bus accident, multiple deaths. Below it was a date. It was today's date, just many years ago. My chest tightened as I stepped back toward the bus. My seat was still empty, but the window beside it. There was a faint handprint on the glass, from the inside. That was when I understood. The man hadn't been traveling forward. He had been trying to finish a journey that never ended. And sometimes when I travel at night and the road goes silent, I still feel someone sit beside me, waiting to move on.